Hello everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome to my channel. Those of you that are returning, welcome back. Those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Kat Bowser and I am a licensed therapist, but I'm also a writer working on my first debut novel, Coexist Division. So in my channel, I like to chat about all things writing, all things fantasy, all things world building, character development, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys have suggestions or ideas that you want to talk about, let me know. I'd love to see what we can do about that. So for today, I thought we'd do kind of a fun little video because let's face it, everybody likes to talk about tropes and I'm no exception. So for this video, I thought I would touch on the top 10 tropes that drive me nuts because everybody has them. Now, I will say, these tropes can be written well. I just rarely see them written well. If you're able to write this trope well, kudos to you. Let me know because I want to read it. I want to see how it's done. So with that being said, I thought I would just launch into these 10 tropes that drive me crazy. If you like any of these tropes, great. That's awesome. I will probably do a video at a later point of the top 10 tropes I love. So chances are you'll find a trope you like on that one too. So with that being said, let's just launch right into it. So trope number 10 that drives me crazy is the horrible relatives. Why is it that usually the poor child or poor orphan whose parents, who were these wonderful people, always have the most horrible relatives? Like either their aunt and uncle is abusive or their grandfather doesn't pay attention to them, or nobody cares about this kid except his two parents that have died. And I'm not against having family that is horrible because let's face it, every family has some that are horrible. I'm just against families that are made of nothing but horrible people. And it doesn't make sense to me, especially if the parents were very nice people, because generally nice people don't come out of horrible families. It happens, but generally you're going to have one or two other relatives that are good people that resemble the parents that have passed on. So for those of you who are writing young adult or new adult, and I know this pops up the most in those, I'm not against you giving the main character or maybe even a secondary character family that is trying to prevent them from accomplishing something. I think that's great. It definitely adds drama. But I think it's also very, very important that you throw in a relative or a friend or someone who is somewhat supportive of this character, because that to me is a lot more realistic. Trope number 9 that drives me crazy: the reset button / the status quo. And this is going to sound really weird because I actually do like several anime that abuse the reset button, particularly Dragon Ball. It abuses that button to death. But within fiction, I'm not a huge fan of the reset button because it usually wipes away any character development that you have. If the character knows at the end of everything they can revive anyone who's died, they can set the world back to the way it was, then what's the point of them really even having any anxiety about winning or even going on this adventure to begin with? Now, the status quo is a little different because this is something I see a lot, mainly in like TV shows. Like you see it in The Simpsons, you see it in, I believe, like Family Guy and things like that, where basically after everything's said and done, everybody goes back to the way things were. A lot of young middle school aged books do this a lot. When I was younger, Babysitter's Club did this a lot. I believe they had like something like 6 winter dances and they all stayed in middle school the whole time. And I understand why some authors like this because it basically gives you free reign to do whatever you want. But to me, it always felt a little unrealistic, so I'm not a huge fan of it. Okay, trope number 8, and this one mainly applies to fantasy, but I see it in sci-fi as well. And that's everybody speaks English. This bothers me because I think it really minimizes your ability to world build. Now, I understand the characters need to be able to communicate somehow with each other, but I think making it so they all speak the same language is a little lazy. I would much rather do something like, okay, well, maybe there is a universal translator, and at some point the translator gets broken, and now everybody has to figure out how to talk to each other again. That's interesting to me. because 90% of communication is completely nonverbal. Language, spoken language, is very, very minimal in what it does. So there are ways to communicate without speaking the same language. It's difficult, but it's doable. And also, this gives a great chance for characters to maybe learn one another's languages a little bit. Personal story, when I was in sixth grade, I had a close friend who was an immigrant from Mexico, and she spoke no English. I spoke no Spanish. We stayed friends the whole school year, and we communicated strictly through motions and hand gestures and smiles, facial expressions. And she was a great girl. I mean, her name, I still remember her name was Cindy, and I hope she's doing well right now. But that's something I like to see more in books and in movies and in TV shows is let's show the diversity of these cultures a little more. Okay, trope number 7 that drives me crazy, the alpha bitch. Okay, we all know this character. She's usually the head cheerleader or head of her social class or whatever status you want to use. And she is snobby, she is arrogant, she is always picking on the MC or on the MC's friends. She has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And that is my problem with her. I don't mind having a character that's a jerk because Lord knows you need conflict. But a character that has no redeeming qualities at all just irritates me. And again, it doesn't seem very realistic. If you want to make someone an adversary for your character, that's great. Let's do that. Let's make them in conflict. Let's put obstacles in front of them. But let's also show that that's not all there is to this character. That maybe she does have a softer side. Maybe she does have people that she's actually nice to, and not just because she wants to gain something. I just want a little more development on this character so she doesn't come across as a complete stereotype. All right, number 6. This one, I'm going to admit, this is strictly personal taste, and that's the sad ending. I hate sad endings. I really do. If I want to see a sad ending, I'll go watch the news. When I read fiction, I use it as an escape. I love to go to these fantasy worlds, these worlds of mystery, these worlds of great technology. I love to cheer for these characters. I love to root for these characters. So when all that amounts to is them either failing at their task or them dying or just not an ending that helps the good guys out, I'm kind of a little depressed. But I also recognize that is strictly just me. There are very well written sad endings that I don't like, and it's strictly just because they're sad endings. There's nothing wrong with them from a literary standpoint. There's nothing wrong with them from a development standpoint. I just personally don't like them. So I rank this one a little higher up because if you write them well, these endings are just fine. It's just not for me. Trope number 5, real men don't cry. Oh, how I loathe this trope so much. Oh my goodness, I hate this trope. And part of this definitely has to do with my career. I cannot tell you how many clients, men, that I have seen who I work with them for weeks and weeks and weeks, and finally they get to the point where they feel like they can express their emotions and not be scorned or yelled at or shamed. And usually these men have such deep emotions, such deep hurt that they could not deal with because society says that they should not cry. I want to see the men cry. This is one reason, honestly, I love Lord of the Rings so much, is because these men are affectionate, they are emotional, they're not afraid to express themselves to one another, and I freaking love it. If you want to have a character who doesn't cry, okay, but I want to see from them that there's another way they're getting their emotions out. Because not everybody cries. I admit that. Not everybody has to cry. But I want to see them feel like they're able to express themselves in some way. Or if you want to take the angle that maybe they grew up being told that they couldn't cry and you want to show why this is a bad thing, please, please do that. Because more and more people need to hear it, and more people need to see it. That suppressing your emotions does not make them go away. Emotions have energy to them. So if you keep them inside, I can guarantee you they will come out somehow. Most of the time, with people that don't express themselves, I see backaches, I see neck aches, I see headaches, I see stomach pains. I see lots of physical ailments that pop up because these emotions have to go somewhere, and they will find a place to go. All right, trope number 4, the incompetent dad. Oh, Lord Almighty. I despise this trope with a burning passion. I despise this trope. And it's probably because I have had great father figures in my life. My dad is great. My father in law is great. My husband is a great uncle. My brother in law is a great father. And I know this is done primarily for comedy, but there's other ways to get your comedy in. And a lot of times it bothers me because it's done with characters that are otherwise supposed to be very involved parents. They're usually in a good relationship with their wife, but it's like when the wife leaves, the father suddenly has no idea what to do. And while that might be true in some cases, I don't think it's true most of the time. Most of the time, fathers are fairly competent. I mean, they know how to change diapers, they know how to feed their kids, they know how to play with their kids. And when we keep showing them as these men that just fall apart when their wife or their partner is not there, I think it really does them an injustice. And I'd love to see this trope just go away. Or if you want to use it, make there be a good reason why it's there. If the dad is incompetent, then has he been out of the kid's life since they were born? Has he not been involved? Okay, then he has a reason. He doesn't know. Or maybe the dad usually handles other aspects of the child rearing. Maybe he doesn't know how to change diapers because the wife always does that. But the other things he's very competent at. If you want to make a dad incompetent, don't make them 100% incompetent. Make them incompetent in specific areas. And on the reverse, make sure you make the mom incompetent in certain areas too, because I can guarantee you no mom is perfect either. All right, trope number 3, female on male violence. This one, I feel like it's kind of sad I even have to talk about it, but apparently in a lot of fiction, if a female hits a male, it's funny. If a male hits a female, it's horrible. Both are horrible. Abuse is not just from male to female. In fact, a lot of abuse is unreported that is female to male, and it's in part because of the society idea behind this trope. Females in general are not going to use as much physical violence, but it does happen. But emotional violence is just as damaging, and honestly, I would even say more damaging. As a whole, I think treating someone who has suffered physical violence is usually easier than treating someone that has gone through emotional violence, because emotional violence is much more in depth, it lingers, and usually, unless you know what you're looking for, you can't see it. So I really don't like this trope because it really just perpetuates this stereotype that men cannot be abused, men cannot be raped, men are not never the victim, and that is not true. And it's unfair to the victims, I feel, to keep perpetuating this trope. Okay, trope number 2, the education mama / soccer mom. This shows up so much in anime, and I hate it every single time. So education mama in anime is essentially a mother who pushes her child's educational pursuits to the nth degree. She never stops. That's all she cares about. I think the best Western equivalent is probably a soccer mom, which is kind of the same thing. They push whatever their child's current goal is to the nth degree. And, oh Lord, I don't like it because most of the time the child either doesn't have an interest or they aren't as interested as the moms think they are. And I just think it's so damaging. I see so many parents that are trying to vicariously live through their children, and so their children grow up with what we call conditional positive regard, which is essentially a feeling of, I have to act a certain way to earn your love. And I don't think I need to tell you guys why that's not a good thing, why that's damaging. Um, it usually leads to a lot of anxiety, it leads to depression, and for me, it's just not funny. I mean, I understand why this is a trope in certain animes. I understand why some people like it. I don't. I just don't find it funny. Maybe you guys do, and if you do, more power to you. But this just irritates me to no end. I would much rather see maybe a series where a mom is trying to push her child or a family member into something they feel is important, but instead maybe they can have a conversation and actually talk about what the child actually wants, what the child actually is interested in, and maybe reach some kind of a compromise. That's what I would like to see. I don't see that a lot, and I would love to see more of it. Okay, guys, trope number one. And this one is probably going to feel a bit repetitive, but there is no other trope that drives me crazy as much. And that is abuse is romantic. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's horrible. And the number of books I see where verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. If you are not telling them, yes, I want to have sex, yes, I'm okay with this, it's not consent. Okay? I don't care if you're married to them. If you're not okay with it, it is not consent. And if you are only okay with it because you're afraid of what will happen if you're not okay with it, that is not consent. And I am sick of all these stories just promoting this like it's this wonderful romantic thing. It's not. It's not. A relationship that is romantic is one where two people communicate, two people help and support one another, and two people strive to protect and take care of each other. That is romantic. I want to see two couples that have their own interests outside of their relationship, who know who they are outside of the relationship, and who use their own traits to help each other because they want to. That's what I want to see. I am so tired of seeing this trope where the guy or the girl, although I don't see that as often, just mentally berates their partner and physically abuses their partner and forces themselves sexually on their partner. This is not romantic. This is not a good relationship. This is a horrible, abusive relationship. Please get therapy for these people. The only time I want to see this in a story is if it's to point out how horrible this relationship is, and by God, please get these characters out of this relationship. That is the only time I want to see this trope. And that's to point out how horrible this trope is. This is one trope I really, except in the scenario I just talked about, I really can't see this trope written well. I just can't, just because the subject matter is so horrible. And I see way too much of it. Okay, guys, so those were the top 10 tropes that drive me bananas. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I actually really like talking about tropes. I think they're very interesting because, let's face it, they're in every kind of literature. So I hope you guys enjoyed and maybe got a little bit of insight. Chances are you're not going to see any of these tropes in my work. So thanks for stopping by. And as always, if you guys like this kind of content, please leave me suggestions, comments. Feel free to subscribe if you will. And I will see you guys next time. Till then, keep writing.